You have to be really intentional about putting a team together.
I was in!
Crawled out of the pile and started screaming.
How good is Joey Bosa?
Herbert, rolling, looking, throwing, end zone, touchdown!
It's intercepted. Derwin James. Derwin was there.
You got to be on a mission every day in the NFL. But even more than that, you got to be on a mission together.
Welcome to another episode of Chargers Unleashed. Dan Wolkenstein and Jake Hefner here with you from the LAFB Network. Along with podcasts everywhere, you can also find us on YouTube and Patreon and all our major social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at LAC_Unleashed. If this is your first time tuning in today, we have an amazing show lined up for you as we have a special guest sitting down with us to talk a little Chargers football. Somebody I think might know a little thing or two. Dan?
Yes. Boy, do we have a fun discussion. The pride of Fort Wayne, Indiana, University of Notre Dame alum, two-time team captain for the Fighting Irish, member of the 2019 All-Rookie team for the Los Angeles Chargers, has a degree in mechanical engineering and is also your starting linebacker for your Los Angeles Chargers. A man on an absolute mission this year. We are pleased to introduce Drue Tranquill. Drue, thank you for joining the show. How you doing?
Hey, Dan, Jake, how you guys doing? I'm doing fantastic. Excited to join you guys.
No, we are doing good. Looks like you're getting some treatment, so hopefully we can have a nice, relaxing conversation. Hopefully we'll have some fun here. You have been gracious enough with your time to join us. Thank you so much. We're going to get into all kinds of fun topics. We'll talk about 2021 offseason, the special teams issues that we've had, maybe getting past that, some defensive changes, some of the mindsets going into the season. Maybe get to know Drue a little bit more off the field. But let's start all of it with this past season. Last offseason, everyone talked about it. You were having arguably the best camp of any player on this Chargers team. Unfortunately, your season was cut short week one before we could even get a chance to see you on the field for more than 5 minutes. What has this last year just been like for you personally? And what were some of maybe like the key takeaways or things that you've learned while rehabbing and studying from the sidelines?
Yeah, you mentioned it. Currently getting treatment, I've realized that health is the most important asset you have in the NFL. And so obviously staying on top of that this past season. But it was a tough year in a lot of regards. Obviously, the injury first and foremost, but two, just not even being able to travel with the team. So when I got to the point, when I was out of the cast and a little bit more mobile, I wasn't even able to really travel with the team, nor really be in the facility. You had to kind of test every day. And so COVID kind of threw a total wrench in things. And not to mention last year was just very, very hard as a team in general. And we went through a lot as an organization. And so there were just a lot of takeaways for me. One, we got an outstanding quarterback who we're very excited about. And we've got just a ton of guys that have a lot of potential. And I think if we can come together and build a culture that's competitive and about relationships, I think we've got a great chance this year.
Now, Drue, this is the time of the year where all 32 teams, their expectations are at their highest. They're all thinking about one thing. But you hear it all the time when, especially when we're talking about this Chargers team, probably over like the past decade, you always hear on paper, this team is as talented as any other team in the NFL. And there are a multitude of different reasons why things haven't played out. From your perspective, what were some of the biggest opportunities that the Chargers had to improve this offseason? What are you most looking forward to come 2021?
I think I mentioned it earlier. Our quarterback's just outstanding, and we beefed up along the offensive front to protect that guy. I don't think, Tom and those guys were messing around. Like, they went out and got some guys, and Corey Lindsley and Matt Filer and Ode Abugier, and we really beefed up our offensive line. So I'm excited, not only what that's going to do for us in protecting Justin, but also what it's going to allow for us to do in the run game when you talk about JJ and Austin and Josh Kelly and those guys. So I'm excited to see how we move the ball offensively. And certainly if our offense can sustain long drives, I'd love that as a linebacker. I love that.
Speaking of the linebacking group, General Manager Tom Telesco and the team have made it apparent that they're wanting this linebacking group to get faster and more athletic. Yourself, Kaiser White, Kenneth Murray, and others. It's early, but how would you describe this linebacking core? And is the linebacking identity, what is the identity that the linebacking group that fans should expect to see come game day?
Well, I'll tell you, Jake, it's we've been watching a lot of old 49ers film when you got guys like Pat Willis and Navarro Bowman and Michael Wilhoit, and obviously Coach Wilhoit is coaching us now, so we've been able to watch them, and it reminds me a lot, and I hope to build the culture that they had, just fast and physical, disruptors when it came to getting the football out. And so I think we've got a great relationship, a tight bond going in that room. Obviously, shifting from the 4-3 to the 3-4. We want to come out and show in camp that there needs to be two of us on the field at all times, and Coach Staley can't just get into this 5 DB look and throw two of us on the sideline and put one of us on the field. So we got a little chip on our shoulder as inside linebackers, but we're excited for the opportunity, and this defense certainly allows us to do a lot of different things with getting after the quarterback, rushing the passer, doing things in coverage, dropping in zones, covering man. So really excited just for the opportunity and the versatility that the defense allows.
I've always enjoyed asking this question of players, especially now in a transition year, especially for you guys, just having a whole new coaching staff. Several players always talk about their why or what motivates them from a year-to-year basis. And especially for you, your 2020 season was unfortunately cut short. But what is it for you that always keeps you motivated on a week in and week out basis when playing the game?
It's a great question. Coach Staley was talking about your production equals your purpose plus your process today. And I think, that why kind of gets at your purpose a little bit. And for me, it's always gone back to my faith in Jesus Christ. And I was 12 years old and sitting on my floor, and Tim Tebow was a real inspirational guy for me growing up. And I just loved how he could be such a dominant force as an athlete, but just also represent his faith so well. And I remember sitting on my floor, I think I crunched out 100, 200 push-ups, just super motivated after watching one of his games. But I remember sitting there praying, and I wrote on this poster. I just ripped down this old poster off my wall and wrote on the back, Lord, the plans you have for me. If you give me the platform to get me there, I'll give you all the glory. And it's cool, man. I've had, 2 ACLs, season-ending injuries in college, and now the dislocated ankle. But it seems like I should just not be the same player. But I just feel like I just keep finding this inner source and this energy to just be better than I was even before the injury. And so that kind of motivates me to just share that on my platform and just inspire others. And I think just my competitive nature and love for the game, motivates me as well.
That inner spirit and that inner fight, I think, is something that all of us can strive to have and accomplish. And I love hearing kind of the resiliency that you bring across all the different injuries and things you've had to deal with on and off the field. Looking at kind of the team as a whole, we in a small amount of video we've seen so far from OTAs, looks like there's clearly been a shift towards kind of that 3-4 scheme versus the 4-3 you had previously. What has the changes been like with Coach Staley and Coach Hill and the overall defensive philosophy, and how do you see it impacting maybe your game specifically?
Yeah, we're a lot more multiple this year. It seems like, especially early on, just single high, 2 shell looks, man under, covers you, whatever there is to play on defense is in this playbook. Whereas last year, we really, really were 4 under 3 deep, and that's kind of what we prided ourselves in, and that's kind of what we stuck to. So I think just the opportunity to be more multiple and do different things is this thing that stands out to me.
In terms of being more multiple, what does that do for the psyche of a defense? Just a side tangent. What does that do for you guys knowing that you're going to be coming from all angles at all times and the offense doesn't really know what to expect versus in the past where you kind of hung your hat on a specific scheme?
Yeah, I think if you just look at the way the game is going, and not that it hasn't always been this way, but it's very, very much centered defensively around affecting the quarterback, specifically post-snap. And so when as a defense that you've got a lot of tools in your toolbox to really affect his look post-snap, it gives you some confidence, not only to get the ball out, but just to get stops and get the ball back to your offense. And so I'm excited to see how we're able to especially when you look at our division and some of the quarterbacks we have in there. It's going to be really, really important to make things foggy for those guys, and I think this defense is certainly built to do that.
We're talking to Drue Tranquill, the starting linebacker for your Los Angeles Chargers. Now, back in 2019, Drue, as a rookie, you made a name for yourself first on special teams and named to the all-rookie team as a special teamer. The Chargers, as we know, have struggled a bit recently with special teams. Telesco and the coaching staff have put a huge emphasis on fixing that this year via players and coaching staff coming in, and players picked up on free agency and in the draft. From your perspective, as you were rehabbing and kind of watching from the sidelines and not even able to be at the games, but watching from afar, what were kind of the main issues the team had with special teams that you saw? And what do you guys think you need to turn it around this year?
For me, special teams is always just going to want to. It's guys embracing their role, and it's a sad thing because it's the third element of the football game when you look at offense, defense, and the kicking game. But some guys, it's almost like they want to shrug it off, like it's not that important, or you're less than because you're not starting on offense or defense. But for me as a fourth round pick, and I barely made it in the fourth round. I mean, they had to get to the compensatory picks for me to get in there. I knew like I would make my name on special teams, and it was similar at Notre Dame. I was a 3-star recruit, and so I wasn't just going to come in and be given a starting role on defense. And so when I look at how we played last year, we had a lot of guys because of injuries rotating in, new guys. So there's obviously an element of communication and experience that's missing, but I think it just boils down to guys loving and embracing their role in whatever capacity that is. And when you get somebody who maybe they're a punt, kickoff return guy, and they're not really getting a lot of snaps on offense or defense, but they just see those reps as the most important plays of that game, you build this culture where guys are just competitive, and it's about relationships, and it's not about egos, and you put all that aside, and this winning culture just manifests itself. And I saw it at Notre Dame when in 2016, we're 4-8. We were horrible. And we got blown out by USC the last game of the season. And we came back that next season in 2017, and there was a total shift in mindset. And like one of the key messages was embracing your role, like embrace your role to the fullest and perform it to the best of your ability. And I really hope that's what we can do this year as well.
Now, you were a two-time team captain at Notre Dame, and you previously discussed how you kind of led your teammates. And I find it fascinating how similar your leadership values are to the new coaching staff here in LA, especially Coach Staley. You hear a ton from Coach Staley about leadership and the importance of building relationships and spending time with each other in order to gain trust. Go back a few years, that's like literally exactly what you had said about yourself coming out of college. What's been the strongest message from Coach Staley and his coaching staff of what the team needs to accomplish? And is there maybe like a common theme or thread that you hear from coaches so far?
Well, we got this message on the back of our shirts that says "Our Way," and I think that is a really critical message because just with the spread of information nowadays, with social media, with all the talk shows, you can really get concerned and caught up in what other teams and other people are doing when that stuff's kind of irrelevant and doesn't really matter. What really matters is what you're bringing to the table each and every day, and if you can be the best version of yourself, because it doesn't really matter, what Darren Waller is doing in Las Vegas right now. Like there's going to come a time when I'm lined up across from him, and if I'm concerned with what he's doing and what he's doing and the scheme they're doing, and I haven't worked on my own craft or concerned myself with my own craft, I'm not going to be the best version of Drue Tranquill to go cover him or make a tackle on him. And so I love his message of our way because it's just about competing against yourself each and every day. And I think that leads to winning.
And this may be an extension of your answer there, Drue, but I know coaches talk a ton about wanting to be a little bit more versatile on both sides of those balls. Coach Staley's talked about it a lot, both offensively and defensively, paying more attention to detail. For you in the linebacking group specifically, what does it mean in terms of what you and the group need to focus on specifically or even tactically and work on this season?
Well, he opened up off-season meetings, Zoom meetings, and we literally just talked about technique and fundamentals. And we're like, yo, coach, like, are we going to start talking a little X's and O's, getting to the playbook here. And he was like, no, like, we're just going to talk about tackling and taking the ball away. Tackling, beating blocks, and taking the ball away. And we literally spent the first week talking about those three things. And so I think, if I want our linebacker core to do anything different this year, it's create more takeaways, defeat blocks better, and make more tackles. Like, if we can do those things, like, schematically, you got to know your job. You're a professional. If you're doing the wrong assignment, guys can't count on you. You're not embracing your role. You can't play. But so that's a given. But when you talk about going to the next level and what it takes to be a championship team, just go look back at that 49er team when I was talking about Pat Willis and Navarro Bowman. Like, those guys were getting the ball out. They were disrupting the quarterback. They were picking guys off. They were creating fumbles, creating takeaways, and doing those things. So I want to see that productivity in our group. And I think that's something Coach Staley has been hounding. It's like the X's and O's, they'll take care of themselves, but you have to focus on those fundamentals. That's the foundation of football.
Now, you mentioned it earlier. A lot about the fundamentals. You talked about kind of what gets you in the right mindset, and last season was a tough one for you. We just got done with May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, and mental health is a topic that both Jake and I are super passionate about and are also very much advocates for. I've had some issues with mental health that I talk about all the time, and I have no problem giving examples of what I've had to go through. You've come out and talked about your experiences with anxiety and coping with them. How have you learned to battle and overcome your anxiety, and what lessons or skills has that brought you or taught you on or off the field?
Yeah, I think when you talk about tools of dealing with those issues, there's obviously varying degrees of severity, right? And for me, growing up as a kid, like, I reached the point where my mom, took me to the doctor and wanted to figure things out because I wasn't eating, and I don't know if it's my engineering mind or I just think of worst case scenario or every problem that could arise, but that was kind of where I was at as a kid, is I was just always constantly just worried about what could or couldn't be or what could or couldn't happen. And, that led me to focus on things that were outside of my control. And so I think it gets back to what we were talking a little bit before, Dan, is that idea of competing against yourself each and every day and focusing on what you can control. And so, some tools for me, I like to start my morning out where, I don't look or touch my phone for at least an hour. I actually got the idea from Pastor John Mark Comer, but he talks about parenting your phone. And I think there's just so much input and information out there that it can cause anxiety. And if you're not just still with yourself in the morning and allow yourself to process thoughts, like, those anxiety levels, those depression levels can be up. So for me, it starts with just putting that device, putting that stimulus away, and really just sitting in prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it, and then reading, for an hour and just really clearing my mind and getting ready for the day. And that's a tool I really have used to help me. And then I think from a mindset perspective, it's just focusing on what, I can control, competing against myself every day, not worrying about, maybe this guy's longer or taller than me, or maybe I'm not as fast as that guy. Well, it really doesn't matter because I am who I am, and it's about being the best version of myself. So I think those are two things that have kind of helped me deal with it. And again, there's varying degrees, but those two things have really helped me.
Now, Drew, you have a podcast of your own, the Drue Tranquill podcast, talking to a variety of people in various industries, focusing on helping your listeners optimize and balance their lives to maximize their potential. Tell us a little bit more about your show and, kind of the goals that you have in regards to it.
Yeah, well, similar to this, I just love having conversations with people, and I think there's so much to learn from different people with different experiences. And so if I can use my platform to have conversations, capture those, and then share them with others, I think it's just an incredible tool, the internet, that is, to share that and equip people. And so, I think there's so much content out there that isn't necessarily great for our brains and great for our development. There's so much stimulus out there. So I hope to just create a channel that, has just wholesome content that can equip people to be the best version of themselves and maximize their God-given potential. And so, we do that through bringing athletes, like we brought on Austin Eckler the other week, and he just had this incredible underdog story of coming from a Division II school in Western Colorado to recently signing a $24.5 million contract. And he talks about, the ups and the downs and the ebbs and flows and the tools that kind of helped him get to that space. And so, we're looking to bring on athletes, teachers, entrepreneurs, people from different industries, just to shed light on their experiences, their successes and failures, and hopefully make a positive impact.
I love that. Now, we've talked to Drue Tranquill, where we've talked about all things on and off the field. We like to have some fun, keep things light. Drue, thank you so much for joining us. We like to end most of our shows with some rapid fire questions. So, Drue, are you open for a few rapid fire questions for us and the listeners?
Let's do it. See how I do.
All right, let's see how you do. All right, OTAs have been open for a short period of time, but if you had to pick one player that has stood out so far, who would that be?
Derwin James. Having him back is fantastic. He's I've loved training with him all off season, and certainly being able to continue to do that during OTAs. He brings just a different type of energy to our team.
Now, whether it's in weekly practices, pre-game, in the huddle, who's the biggest hype man on this Chargers team?
Justin Jones, defensive tackle. He's talk about the energy. This guy brings it every day. Love that guy.
All right, now we're big foodies on this show. I'm not sure how much into food you are. I know you're from Indiana, so let's go food cuisine. Which is a better food cuisine? You got Indiana, which known for chicken fried steak. I've heard of sugar cream pie, corn, or you got the Southern California flair. You got tacos, chips and guac, In-N-Out, sushi, acai bowls. Which state's cuisine does Drue Tranquill prefer?
I gotta go, Dan. I gotta go California because I'm a dairy-free guy, and the Midwest is all about the dairy. They're all about it. So out here, you talk about the acai, some of those desserts that I can eat. I'll have to go with the California.
All right, Drue. It's 12:45 in the afternoon at SoFi Stadium. Drue Tranquill takes out his iPod, puts his headphones in, turns on the music. What's he turning on to get himself hyped up for game time?
Oh, man. It's an interesting question. I was reading Kobe Bryant's book, Mamba Mentality, and he was talking about what's in his headset before the beginning of every game. And I really vibed with what he was saying because he said it's different based on where his headspace is at. So if I feel like I'm kind of dragging a little bit and I need to get hype, maybe I'll crank, a little bit of Kygo or something that's more upbeat, get me going, a little bit of NF. But maybe it's, a day where, my mind's kind of racing and I just need to slow down. And maybe I'm anxious and uptight and I'll just turn on, some slower worship music. So it really depends on the headspace, man.
I love it. Now, we know how good you are on the field. Outside of football, though, what is one thing that people may not know about Drue Tranquill, and what is something that you are fantastic at off the field?
Dan, I'm not fantastic at it yet, but I hope to be, and that's a avid surfer. I love being on the ocean, and I've graduated from my 8-foot wave storm onto a shorter board this off season, and so I love being out there. The water out here in California is nice and chilly. It's a little ice bath for me, and it's just peaceful out there. So I'm not great yet, but I hope to be soon. I love surfing.
Real quick, do you have a favorite spot to surf?
I love Newport Beach right here. We've got a lot of great spots. Got Blackie's here. We got 56. A lot of cool spots along here. Huntington, Newport, Dana Point. We got it all in here in the Orange County.
Nice.
Last one for you, Drue. Who is the best athlete to ever come out of Notre Dame? And if the answer is yourself, we'll totally understand.
Well, Jake, it's not myself, unfortunately. I wish I could run 4.3. I wish I was 6'4" with a little bit longer arms. Shoot. Man, I think the obvious answer is Jalen Smith that I played with, just obviously middle linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. And he'll even say, he was an unbelievable athlete, had a very unfortunate injury, but has still been able to to play at a very high level. So I might have to say him or actually another Fort Wayne guy. All three of the Fort Wayne, there's something in the water. Tyler Eifert, tight end. I heard he was a freak show. I never got to play against him in college, but when he came in before all his back injuries, they said he was just unbelievable. So 260 Fort Wayne on the map. They're producing.
There we go. I love. Okay, Drew, you are off the hot seat. You have made it through with flying colors. Proud of you, Drew. Thank you so much for coming on Chargers Unleashed. We had a blast. I appreciate your honesty and honestly just kind of being able to kind of give some perspective on the day in the life of you and what it's been like for the past year. There's so much excitement to be had for this Chargers team in 2021 and beyond, and we cannot wait to see you ball out back on the field. These next couple of weeks, where can people find you? What are you working on?
I'm just going to be at the facility every day working with these guys and trying to get things right heading into the off season. And outside of that, just spending time with my family and my new daughter that just came into the world. So I got 2 kiddos at home keeping me busy, and certainly a lot of guys in the locker room that keep me on my toes. So we'll be getting after it. But no, really appreciate you guys. This was super fun. Thanks for putting up with this bottoms up look for me while I'm getting treatment here. But a lot of fun, guys.
It works. This seems like it needs to be another show that we have where it's just all of the different players coming on from like the training room, just having them. We need to come up with a clever name for it. But Drew, you can find Drue Tranquill on Twitter. You can find him on his podcast at the Drue Tranquill podcast. Drew, thank you so much for joining us on Chargers Unleashed. You are a friend of the show, and you're welcome back anytime. Good luck with all of the training, and can't wait to see you on the field in 2021.
All right, Dan, Jake, it was fun. We'll see you guys.
All right, thank you so much. We'll
Thanks,
see you later.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that was Chargers starting linebacker Drue Tranquill. Lot to unpack. What a fantastic interview. Just down to earth, the real Drue Tranquill, talking football, talking off the field, favorite foods, favorite music. I just love his mentality, Dan. His attitude, the way that he approaches the game. Especially from the music standpoint, that one kind of caught me off guard when he was talking about, he takes the same approach as Kobe Bryant used to take when it came to his music. And I remember when Kobe would say before games that if he was in like a really aggressive winning mood, that he would put on the Halloween theme from Halloween. And it'd just be like Michael Myers-esque, and you're just hearing that piano like, I'm going to go out and annihilate some people. I thought that was a very interesting response that Drue gave to that. But outside of that, I thought he gave some great insight as far as what the new coaching staff has developed there, along with the scheme changes, even when it came down to the fundamentals. And we were talking about just, when he was mentioning, it's like, hey, coach, are we going to talk some X's and O's? And he said, no, we're going to talk about, just the basics and getting back to the fundamentals. It reminded me a lot. I was going to chime in, but I didn't want to interrupt his answer because it was so good. But it reminded me of what I had heard that Lombardi used to do with his players when he was coaching high school football, and how literally he went up to him the first day of practice, said, this is a football, and threw it away, and then literally practiced the next 2 weeks without a football because he was so focused on making sure that everybody was going to do the fundamentals right before you even brought a football into the equation. So, just what an amazing insight from Drue as far as just not only training camp, but his life as well.
Yeah, Drue brings such a presence and brings like a kind of a calming feel, but also like one of perseverance and resiliency. And, obviously he's gone through hardships with injuries, both in college and in the pros. But his mentality around kind of just his mission to keep competing against himself and to keep going brick by brick to get better and to overcome a lot of these things and control what's in front of you and be able to focus on the things you can control. It really is just something that I think more and more people could get behind. And I definitely took on some life lessons from that conversation. I'm going to kind of go back and rethink with how I do certain things. I find it interesting and also pretty telling that every person we talk about what their favorite thing is looking forward to this season, it's Derwin James. Everyone talks about Derwin James, and for good reason.
Shouldn't be a surprise.
He is that good.
From now on, when we ask that question, we'll just say, Who's the player you're looking forward to the most in 2021, and why is it Derwin James?
Drue James, exactly.
Just expect that to be the answer from here on out.
Yeah, and you hear the one thing I thought was interesting was you hear Drue kind of compare this team to the Niners back in the day with the linebacking core they had, with how multiple they were, and how different this defense feels than what it was previously with Gus Bradley. And again, this is no knock on Gus Bradley, but they are night and day different in terms of what the offenses are going to see going against this defense. And you get a sense from hearing from all these players that like this is genuinely going to be a more fun scheme. Like it just seems like players are going to enjoy playing this more, and they can get more out of it in terms of being able to showcase their talents, being able to kind of show multiple fronts, keep offenses guessing. I mean, it just seems like guys are. I have never heard folks talk as much about a defensive scheme as I have from these players since we've had all these discussions.
Yeah, and it's different when we've talked to a number of the rookies so far that we've had on the show, and of course it's their kind of first get into the NFL, so of course they know nothing different than what they had been playing in college. But if you just isolate Drue's perspective and then go back to the Chris Harris interview, there's some very key similarities between both of their answers when we were asking them questions about the new defensive scheme. And if I remember correctly, Chris Harris was talking about we get the ability to be free. And whatever that specifically means, I can't remember exactly what he said word for word in his response, though. But I think it's just, it was an elaboration on what Drue had mentioned as far as being able to be multiple, have a little bit more versatility in their schemes and what they're going to be doing. So that was one of the biggest things that I took away from that.
And talk about honesty. When Drue talked about how important special teams is, and what his experience has been, and what the mentality is that is required for someone to excel in special teams. And we sit here, we're talking about football, but we're not playing. You would think that all these players are going to play hard every snap for their teammates. But you mentioned it. Some teammates and some players just don't put that much passion into special teams. And you hear Drue's mentality about coming out of college and what he was drafted for and how he made a name for himself early on, and how important special teams is to him. And to kind of hear that aligning with Coach Staley in terms of like what they're looking for in their team and kind of the mentality it takes to be good on special teams, it was just a breath of fresh air for me, because I don't think we've heard anyone talk about special teams in that specificity that Drue Tranquill did.
Yeah. And, coming from where he came from, like you said, Dan, knowing that where he was selected in the draft that year and what he was going to have to do in order to make the team, which was just cut his teeth under special teams. But now look where that avenue has taken him thus far. And it's a testament to anybody in the NFL that is that has to start their career at special teams. You can go all the way back to talking about guys like Terrell Davis, and you've seen it from an Austin Eckler perspective. We could have that conversation for days as far as guys that have made names for themselves starting at that, on that position group and then becoming huge stars in the NFL. So it's a good testament for what he's done in his career.
And I'm very grateful that Drue was able to open up a little bit about kind of the mental health in general. I know last month was Mental Health Awareness Month. Yeah, I said that right. Drue talked about some of the issues that he struggled with, anxiety, and kind of how he copes with it and how much it affects him and kind of what he's learned along the way. And it's really interesting when you listen to his show. Like, he really is about kind of helping people. You could tell he's done this personally first, about kind of learning to balance your life a little bit more and learning how to kind of make it to where you're not getting all one thing versus the other and then kind of going a little bit off kilter. Just the way that he has his mindset, you mentioned at the top, his mindset going into everything, whether that's life, football, family, faith, it really is something to be marveled at. And I commend him for how he's been able to kind of cope with everything he's gone through in life. His family, certainly his parents, have done a great job raising him to where that's where he's able to stand. Just seems like such a well-rounded, very grounded individual. That was Drue Tranquill joining Charges Unleashed. Had a blast. I think there is so much to unpack there. I'm still kind of processing it as we talk about it. So I'll certainly go back and listen to this myself. that's going to do it for this episode of Chargers Unleashed. Again, Jake mentioned at the top, you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Patreon, you name it. If you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube or on podcasts, go ahead and do that. If you feel we're deserving of a 5-star review, we would love to have that too. But in the meantime, you can follow Jake at Jake T. Hefner, myself at Chargers Homer. We are Chargers Unleashed on Twitter at LAC Unleashed. And we will talk to you next time.
Stop! Oh, I'm stopping y'all boys. I can't catch it.
Intercepted. Picked up by Michael Davis.
Explosion, explosiveness from Eckler. There's Murphy. Boy, he blew that up, didn't he? It is picked off. Nasir Adderley. 50-50 ball is 100%. Mike Williams.
Ojena Nwosu. And that will end it.
Time to bolt up.